You want to start?
Yeah, since I called this, I don't care, assuming that you don't cut me off. All right, we're going to call this meeting to order April 10th, 2024, the GBOS special meeting regarding meeting conduct, regulations, and dump trailer. The Girdwood Board of Supervisors, its committee and subcommittees are subject to the Alaska Open Meetings Act as found in Alaska Statute 44.62.310 and Anchorage Municipal Code 1.25, public meetings. The Girdwood Board of Supervisors operates under the Girdwood Public Meeting Standards of Conduct. Calling this chair to order now, and you know, we don't have the land acknowledgement on this. But we will, and I don't have it memorized.
I could just quickly pull it if you like, just to, we'll just pull from this agenda here. There it is.
Thank you. Girdwood Board of Supervisors acknowledges Indigenous peoples of Alaska whose land you reside on. The community of Girdwood, situated between the areas known to be Dena'ina and Inuk land, respects the people who were stewards of this land for generations. We commit to the continued stewardship of this land and are grateful to be part of a wider community that seeks to maintain sustainable use of Girdwood Valley for present and future peoples. Thank you.
Yep. Back.
Okay. Let's start with roll call. Who we have here. My name is Jennifer Wingard. I am co-chair and GBOS and land use supervisor. And I'll just actually Brianna.
Okay, Brianna Sullivan, co-chair and fire department supervisor.
And Mike Edrington, the housing and income supervisor.
Okay, and we know that Guy is on his way. To start with, do we have any disclosures? Okay, none. Do we have any changes or revisions to the agenda?
Move to approve the agenda.
Okay.
I'll second.
All right. We have no changes or comments about it. We'll continue on. Announcements. The public is encouraged to ask questions and provide comment. Please raise your hand and wait to be acknowledged. To help discussion stay productive, please direct your comments to the board rather than other members of the public, and keep your comments focused on the business under discussion, being respectful of everyone's opinions. Moving on to agenda item number 1, Parks and Recreations request. Kyle, I believe that's you.
Sure. We would like to purchase a dump trailer for park operations. And basically, this is a standard double wheel trailer that can articulate and dump. And so it makes it easier for us for doing a ton of things. It also makes us more versatile in the sense of not depending on dump trucks and contractors to bring us material. Our staff can respond to do it. We received a bid, and I'll share it here so you can see it. We received a bid for $13,995, and that basically is a whole kit for us. So we would like to get approval from the GBOS not to exceed $14,000 for it, and this would be coming out of our capital Parks and Rec account to pay for it. And we went out to source bid, and we had 5 bids for it, and some were as high as $22,000. We realized actually when we put this out that people from all over the United States bid on it, and then they put their shipping costs in to send it here.
Sorry. We'll add to the record that Guy Wade has joined us. All right. Is there anything else that you wanted to say about this?
No.
All right.
Questions?
Do we have any questions?
A quick one. I can't quite read the screen that well. What size is the bed on the truck?
It is 83 by 14 feet.
Okay.
Yep. That's the standard size. They go down to 10 feet, but then that really limits your load. So we can do up to 14,000 pounds with this, and then we can pull it with our Muni truck.
And just for reference, see what's typically when you're getting a load, something delivered by a contractor, what's the sort of typical I mean, what are we saving effectively every time you get a load of something, £14,000?
Well, we're probably saving, right now, we're seeing bids of like 220 an hour for a truck.
Okay.
And so, yeah, we're saving that time, and then we can use it for all our brushing and different park projects. Like we're going to do an infield replacement this year, so the staff can use that there. If somebody wants
We
to.
should think about that as 2 or 3 years we pay for effectively just in reduction of other costs.
Yes, and then also we can use it for transporting our snow machines and different things like that. So already it has very effective costs for us.
I'll make a motion to approve not to exceed or spend of not to exceed $15,000 for a dump truck for parks.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, if we have no further discussion, since this is a capital item, let's roll call vote this.
Okay, Jennifer Wingard,
Yes.
Guy Wade,
Yes.
Mike Edgington,
Yes.
Brianna Sullivan.
Yes.
A motion passes 4-0. Thank you.
Okay, next item, we need to talk about how we're going to combat, handle GBOS special meeting to set supervisor roles. I thought in the past we just doodle polled this, but don't we normally do this in May before our meeting? Is that right? Did Margaret want?
Yeah, I think what we wanted to do was they're going to certify the election on 4/23 and then probably have a special meeting just prior to the regular meeting on 5/20, which is what we've done in the past, and then set the new roles for that. And then we wanted to run it by you guys because we were holding off on setting the work session or special meeting for GBS rules until the new member or the new members were certified by the assembly. So that the current members are working on those going forward. So we're going to set something pretty much right after that, after they're setting the rule or the procedures. Excuse me, setting the roles. Sorry, I'm trying to handle two things here.
Yeah, Mike.
My sense is we can combine those two meetings and have an item. But first of all, I'm not sure if we're going to vote on supervisor roles at the 5/20 meeting, then we don't have to have a special meeting to do that as a work session. And in that case, I think we can combine both that and the meeting or work session on rules and procedures into the same thing.
Okay, so maybe we do that meeting in advance of the 5/20 meeting?
Yes, I think so.
Okay. Does anybody have any conflicts the week before? And I don't want to like that, but is everybody going to be in town, and we'll try to work that week to find you time in that week.
Okay, so we are talking about the week of the 13th through the 17th.
Yes, that's correct.
I think that's okay.
Okay.
Is there a particular reason why you wanted that week rather than earlier in May?
We get pretty loaded in the first part of the month, and so I guess if there's any conflicts in May, maybe let us know that now. We could try it for the earlier week. That first week where we have Housing and Economic Committee, Trails Committee, and then we have lots of rentals in the evening. So if anybody has any conflicts in May, maybe let us know if you're not going to be here. We need to check with Brian too, so.
Yes.
Well, we have to wait until the 23rd.
Yes,
It could be.
we have to wait till it's certified and then check with.
Okay, it sounds like we have a general consensus about this. Just anyone else have anything else to say about that? Oh, okay, all right. So done with that agenda item, moving on to GBOS meeting conduct and board relations. So on this one, I thought we could maybe do kind of a more informal conversation rather than like a chaired discussion. And also we can talk about if we want to do this openly or go into executive session. So I'd be interested in what you guys think.
Thank you, Jennifer. I am fine with staying in public for this discussion, mostly because all of our meetings are in public and any conduct that was or wasn't already made was on record, and it's good to have the public able to hear our discussion and keep with trust and fairness in the community and setting standards for GBOS. So I'm fine with discussing it. And I liked how you said like a discussion, open discussion between us four, since Amanda's not here. at the Moment, but if she calls in, we'll look.
Okay.
I can say the same. There's limited circumstances under which you can hold an executive session. So I think there's one kind. Do you have that language to hand?
I can get it.
There is one condition I think is they're under.
And it is
Matters that are
also, for the record, it is something that somebody can
Yeah.
request partway through.
exactly. Any of us could. It has to be a specific, explicit reason to do so.
So it's any subjects that tend to prejudice the reputation and character of any person, including personnel matters. And matters which by law or MOA charter ordinance are required to be confidential. So by the way, that the statement about the potential to go into executive is standard on our agendas. Like it was moved around in this one, but it's just, it's always an option. It's not one that we traditionally take. Okay. So I called this meeting because I think that we need to talk about what happened on Monday. It was shameful
Monday,
on the last GBOS
yes,
meeting.
agreed.
It should never have happened in the first place, and it should never happen again. So we need to, I would like this board to talk about how to make sure it doesn't happen again. But I have deep concern about the way you and Brianna behaved, and I need to hear some assurances about how and why that happened and how it is not going to happen again. Because I felt shut down for the crime of having questions and opinions. And no citizen, but particularly no citizen should ever feel that way. So I would like to hear some of your reasoning, but I do have a list of the ways in which you guys broke protocol. So I hope that you have done some research or that you have something to say for yourselves now.
Well, since we're setting agenda, I'd also like to include previous meetings, including I think was it the previous one, which I wasn't able to attend in person. I think the March meeting, or no, actually it was earlier than that. When, no, sorry, Amanda is. Someone should acknowledge that Amanda is present. I guess I just did. Amanda is present. Join the meeting. So there was a previous meeting where, perhaps unsurprisingly on the same topic, I thought your behavior was completely unacceptable. You started berating members of the audience, took over the chair, insulted the current chair at the time, and acted in a way that was completely unacceptable and broke our code of conduct and normal meeting etiquette. So I think as long as we're covering all of these topics, that's completely reasonable.
Okay, so there was one exchange that happened between me and Amanda, and the thing we broke there is that Amanda and I are friends. And so I kind of forgot. So anyway, I spoke to Amanda as I would like, hey girl. So Amanda and I have talked about this. And so if that is the exchange that you're talking about, Amanda and I are good. However, it is completely unacceptable to hold me to higher standards to ignore your own protocol breaks. In the Monday meeting, we had a member of the audience told that they clearly hadn't read something that they had read. And then when they said they had read it, they were then told, well, they should read it again. We have regular demeaning of people's knowledge base happening in this body, and that is unacceptable. Now, the accusations that you just laid out, I'm going to need quotes on exactly what you think I said, but you have laid out some heavy accusations. So I need you to lay it out exactly what you think I said was wrong. And in the same spirit, I am happy to collect a series of quotes of all the things you have said to people that demeans their knowledge base, Mike, not just how they feel about something, but you say things like, you should have read the minutes. You should have read the bond. You don't know what you're talking about. I am surprised you would be talking about this subject for this long and still not understand it. You have said amazingly derogatory things to people. And we have kind of put up with it. We can say it. We know when it's coming. Whenever you feel challenged on something, it's a defense mechanism that's fine in a way, only it isn't fine. I'm done being bullied, and I'm done having our general citizens being bullied. It is not okay, the way you speak to people.
I'd be interested in this. Sorry.
Can I, I would like to, maybe I can respond for Mike about the Amanda incident, because, I think the tension between the two, I just think it'd be better. I witnessed it too. And, if we want to talk about it now, we can talk about it later. I think I could speak to that without, you may hear it differently coming, even if I said the same thing coming from me as opposed to Mike. So, and I know exactly what he's talking about as well.
Okay, so it wasn't the exchange with Amanda?
Right.
Okay, so first of all, I feel like you guys are calling me out for something that is like nothing compared to what you regularly do. And again, you regularly demean people's knowledge bases, right? But okay, as I said, Amanda and I worked it out. Now, and I believe I've already referred to this, like apologies in the moment, and I can say apologies again, but that does not excuse your behavior. Any one of you could have spoken to me about that individually. Any one of you could have addressed it at the time. But having you do what you did Monday night is inexcusable. So let's talk through that a little bit. There are a number of ways to handle it, but what you ended up doing was airing dirty laundry and embarrassing Girdwood Board Supervisors and Girdwood in general. All of us should be treated with more respect than that. If you don't like the way I treated Amanda, which again, Amanda and I are cool with, we talked about, like, Amanda and I are long-term friends and we've been dealing with this for a while. She feels that she was dragged into this unfairly, and she and I are solid. We are good. Which any of you would know had you given me the respect of speaking to me about this, rather than airing this.
I think it's,
Now, it's
but
a rate.
people don't know that. And so, it was a tirade, and, you brought up things, well, 2 years ago, asking about that, and 3 years, and I just, I don't think people need to be able to speak. She was just up here trying to explain her situation, and, similar, and I don't agree with the way Mike responded to you, actually, but we'll get to that. But people don't know, people need to be, feel welcome to speak without a board member jumping on them and pointing out, well, 2 years ago, I gave you, something sounded like from an earlier from a professional thing, not a GBOS thing, advice and stuff, before you're a board member. And it was shocking to me. I should have said something, but, apologize, Amanda, is I'm glad you did that. But I think we also got to keep in mind that people that are listening or in these meetings have to feel comfortable and, witnessing that. They may not know that you're friends. They may not know what's going on behind the scenes. The public has to feel comfortable with being able to speak up.
Well, I agree. And I don't have any problem, if I need a public apology for that, I don't have any problem with that at all. Like I said, Amanda and I worked it out, but however, it is completely unfair to hold me to a higher standard than anybody else on this board. And in particular, we have a regular, demonstrable, very consistent demeaning of people's knowledge bases happening. And it is not me that is doing it.
So the incident, I believe it was the January meeting, we're discussing the incident with Amanda. It was actually broader than that. There was the same time period. There was I believe you unilaterally took over the chair and started trying to take control of the meeting. And I believe that was actually during one of the online members. The online members of the community was speaking at the time. I was also online. I wasn't at that meeting in person. So it was a broader incident of just the Amanda thing. So whatever the relationship you have with Amanda, I don't think that that follows to the whole period, and definitely the unilateral sort of shouting over the chair and taking over the chairing functions, I thought was incredibly insulting to GPOS.
So what day was this?
It was the January, whatever the
January
date was.
regular meeting. Well, here.
Except I was sick.
Oh, yes, you were online. And
I don't recall this at all, but again,
If you go back and listen to the recording, it'll be very clear.
well, I'm sorry, I don't recall myself ever shouting.
okay,
I was not in the room. It just appeared that way from online. But the unilateral taking over the chair was definitely.
And so this justifies what you did on Monday.
I think
You
we
didn't
keep
speak to
mixing,
me about it.
I think we keep changing places for who did what at what meeting. And the things we're speaking about started in January. And so that's where we have a specific example with a member from the public. And Guy already said this. I think we all agree that members of the public online and in the room should feel welcome to be here, make their statements. No one knows their relationship. It is nice in hindsight to hear that you said you had a conversation with her 3 months later, but none of us asked you. We didn't know. I mean, I didn't ask anyone else if they asked you. I didn't ask you. But it felt shocking to be here right in that moment and not knowing what to do or feel for that person who's being brave and speaking out. Not everyone's comfortable with that. And then being treated like that. And we have so many rules of how the audience should behave or act or adhere to, but no, presumably rules for how we all should direct our behavior in our elected position. So that time that we keep speaking of, Guy already said, and thank you for saying that you have a friendship with her. But I would hope that all of us would never do that to a person and be members beyond us in other boards in the future. So I think we all agree that we want to set a standard for that. No one's saying we need to, well, and then on that same meeting, there was a member of the public that was also not treated equally as others during their having the floor. And I was chairing and didn't stop to interrupt that because it was all very quick. And Jennifer, you were trying to tell me what to do, maybe because you were trying to help me, but because you were not pleased with what the member from the public was saying. And that got really quickly confusing. And then we didn't go back to that member of the public. And then I think I continued sharing, but I felt personally really uncomfortable with that. And I never want to have that happen to anybody who's sharing or have such a yucky feeling during a meeting. And we're all here volunteering our time, and members of the community are taking times out of their evening to hear us speak about should be important things in our community. So I think that speaking to the items in all those cases, we wouldn't have had that problem. And I know that goes with following the rules, but if people were really speaking to items and not getting off subject, we wouldn't have had any of those. As far as Monday's meeting, and that also was messy and like really quick of what do we do, what's going on. But I am happy to hear you wanting to discuss that, and separately talking about, then you're saying how you feel one of our board members keeps speaking to public members. But that kind of goes along with the same line of how we respond to the public or treat them.
All right, so parsing this out, excuse me, 1 second. Parsing this out just real quickly, I think we've already addressed the Amanda. I've said I can
Unless Amanda
apologize
wants to
for it.
speak up.
I've said that I've spoken to her.
Amanda, just so you know, online, you can unmute whenever you want. We're having an open discussion.
So just so we don't keep flogging that horse, are we comfortable moving on from that? Is there anything else that you want to hear about that particular vote?
I think it'd be good to understand how we as a board should respond if anything like that happens, okay?
I think that is the big question, and I think that's how we're going to solve this. And it's so solvable right now. I'm glad we're having this meeting. I didn't know how to approach you on it because I didn't know how you'd react. I was surprised how you reacted during the meeting, and I've seen you react before. And I should have approached you, but I didn't. But I think we need to be able to resolve these incidents as they come up right away. Communicate as adults with each other.
Well, great.
And-
So let's talk about what happened Monday
I
because.
don't think, I hadn't finished hearing Guy. I think Guy was still
Oh,
speaking.
sorry.
Well, I just think that, we know what happened Monday. I agree. Mike did say something that I didn't agree with. He made a comment and I can't think of it now. It was something that, I don't know. I didn't like that, but it was his proposal. You had talked to it as nauseum and continued on speaking to it, and so he felt attacked, I guess. And, I think we probably should have just called the question 30 minutes before that because everybody kept saying the same thing over and over. And so, I don't know if we can, during the meeting, stop, take a break, everybody walk around for 5 minutes. We can talk about it as adults to each other and friends and just get through it. I mean, we don't need to be the freaking, Republicans and Democrats fighting each other over stupid crap. So we just need to be able to work through these things. But I don't know how, I don't know the proper procedure and, when it needs to happen. So, we can continue to talk about, I didn't agree with the statement he said to you at all, but I did feel like as the chair, you just kept going on and on and on and saying the same thing. And, eventually we just, need to kind of move on, right? And just, say what we say and, that's part of it. But that, we can continue talking about it Monday too. I should just kind of like your deal, I think. Unless you want to talk more specifically about it. I didn't agree with something Mike said with you.
They specifically told me that my question was not valid. And I don't think that we should be saying that.
I agree.
And so when I raised a point about that, saying, I think that meets our decorum rules, you two jumped into what seemed to be a premeditated move and deposed the chair. Now, there are very clear rules about what constitutes reason to change the chair. And there are also really clear procedures, and none of those were followed. And what ended up happening instead is that you chaired the meeting, or sorry, excuse me, you chaired the discussion
So
of a motion.
sorry, you said you.
Brianna.
Just for the people.
Yeah, that Brianna ended up chairing a discussion for a motion she had brought. And that's not how this is, that shouldn't ever be happening. Like you should have, if we were going to change the chair, it should have gone to you since you were not. But there were a number of other steps along the way to your point about how we can keep this kind of thing happening, or from happening. First of all, we have on the record me being told that what I'm asking is invalid, and that should not have happened. Secondly, my objection to that was never confronted. The board appeared to be okay with that. You didn't pay any, excuse me, Brianna paid no attention to that and then simply took over the chair based on, I don't even know what, but there should have been a voice vote and the chair should have gone to you. But before we even do that, I mean, again, it's extreme measures and I've read through them. I wasn't breaking laws. I wasn't breaking Robert's Rules of Order. If I was talking too much, I believe it to be consistent with the way meetings have been managed. And I've looked up in the past, and I've looked up AI that can track this, but I also really strongly recommend that before you criticize me for that, you take a look at some of the meetings, for example, about the ADU, which Mike chaired despite the fact that it was his motion, and then berated me from the chair, and also accused me of not having read the minutes. Flat out said it. It's a pity you hadn't read the minutes. Flat out said things like, I don't understand economic theory. I do have a degree in economics from UC Berkeley. So I have really been, I've been subject to so much berating, and I just take it as, you know, a defense mechanism, again, of yours. But the bullying needs to stop. And now I understand you guys don't like it. I feel like something has kind of escalated here, but I don't feel, not only do I not feel single-handedly responsible for it, I don't feel like the main instigator of it. And I'm happy to pull out pull quotes, but if I go to that work, I'm not going to take the case to this court. I'm going to take the case to the Girdwood public and say, this is what I have seen happening. And I don't want to have to do that. I don't want this to be public like this. Any of you, if this is really about what happened in January, which I don't remember, and I'm sorry, but it would have been just basic respect to try to talk to me about it. I've always been open. I email you guys back and forth. I text back and forth with all of you. I don't appreciate having that turn into a public temper tantrum at the last GBOS meeting where we aired dirty laundry that I didn't even know existed.
I think if we're going to use the word temper tantrum, we should also apply that to the January incident, because that's exactly how it came across. I would not have used that term, but since you've introduced it, I think that's fine.
I'm not familiar with the January.
I would say there's several different issues going on here. We perhaps just pull them apart a little bit and discuss them. So one is, I think you're right about the way that we as a body operate. We don't make a very clear distinction. We haven't in the past made a clear enough distinction, I think, between the function people perform when they're the chair and as the chair, and the function they're performing as a member of the body when they're holding the chair position. And I think we can definitely do a better job of that in the future. And you're right, there are all sorts of cases in the past where it hasn't worked well, there have been cases in the recent past where it hasn't worked well. So I think as a body, we kind of, you know, we sit in this sometimes a little bit of an uncomfortable space between being too informal and being too formal. And there are places where we probably need to increase the formality to just make things work better. So I think the clearer, all of us should have a clearer understanding of what the functions of the chair are and what the functions you can perform when sort of debating a topic. Well, I think one of the issues we have here as well is we're not very good at the distinction between running the meeting and discussing topics, the deliberation phase. We should perhaps do better there. So that makes it easier to distinguish between when things are happening as a meeting management function and when things are actually happening, topics or actions. I'm happy to discuss. I know I definitely make mistakes and I don't always behave the best way. So I don't think I'm immune to the same problems other people are. I think it's very different in quality. I think what I've seen is a lot of very personal, directed attacks, much more sort of ad hominem attacks from you, Jennifer. Typically, I think what I'm doing, although I know I probably don't always do this, what I'm trying to do is actually deal with the facts and situation. So if I disagree with somebody, if I have done research on something and people are stating things that are just simply not true, I think it's completely reasonable for us to point out that they're not true. I know I don't always do it the best way, and I can do better, and I will do in the future. I'll pay attention to that. But I think to me, that's the difference. It's the difference between, as I think other people have said, between debating the topic at hand and using the relationship with the individual or attacking the person, either on the board or especially with members of the public. And I think that's the other distinction we need to be better at distinguishing. And I definitely take that to hand. I think we all should. You also mentioned members of the public. As far as I'm aware, every incident you've said has involved one single person. It might be broader than that. But,
It is broader than.
I think the ADU, obviously, I think you said was you, but the others are most being one person.
No, they have not been.
Again, I'd look forward to a bit more information so I can understand where the problems are and what to try and fix them. If I agree they're a problem. But the ones I'm thinking about which are problematic are primarily one individual and the comment. I agree with you. The comment about the, actually, can we go to the, do you want to say a little bit more about the invalid thing, my comment for either you or Guy? You said you also thought that was an inappropriate comment. I'm happy to discuss that.
Yeah, I don't, you know, I think we can, you know, that's the biggest fear of somebody sitting out here is they say something and go, that's invalid, you know, that because it isn't to them. And it obviously wasn't to Jennifer. Now, I think just from sitting here and watching it, her continue to comment on it, I think there was, I think if you guys, if there wasn't the whatever between you two, I don't know if you would have continued on that long, to tell you the truth. And but I don't think that but regardless, I don't think we can say things like that to people because it is valid to her and it's valid to Amanda and it's valid to anybody that speaks, and I think that's, one of the worst things that we can do is, is standing up. It takes courage and people don't like it. And that would be one of the biggest things they wouldn't want to hear is, oh, well then never mind. I'm not going to talk anymore because, maybe so I didn't like that. You could say, I disagree with that. You could say, something along.
Yeah.
Dish down.
Sorry.
No, I just, I don't like that. I don't think that has a place really.
I agree. It's a poor choice of words, and it's a choice of concept rather than valid question or question. Again, with you, following on what's been said before, I feel in this particular topic, we've discussed it so often, just going round and round, the same points being brought up. The particular question was, unless we can write down and explain the absolute maximum, the completely unrealistic 0% probability of happening worst case scenario, it's not a valid proposal. And I would argue that if the proposal isn't valid, the requirement that you must be able to explain the absolute the unrealistic worst case scenario is just as in there. But it's still a poor choice of word. Definitely do better in the future. I think that's an interesting question when people bring information to us, which is, a misunderstanding what our role is there. That's an interesting question, but the best way to deal with that.
Well, if I may jump in to comment on two people's statements so far. Also, that we're human, we all make mistakes. I'm still learning how to be on this board and share and learn from other people. And to Jennifer's comment about orchestrated or planned, absolutely nothing was planned. And I didn't even catch, I think, all of it because it was happening fast, even though I'm sitting right here. And I don't know what it was like for people online, so they're probably confused. But we could talk about the spot that you're speaking of, Jennifer, too, that does have a process for a roll call vote. When we can totally switch chairs and someone can make a motion to vacate the chair during a meeting and second it. And then since we have co-chairs, I just fell into that. I didn't think in the moment of all the other options that were out there, like having someone else talk about it. I already felt like, oh, this is the proposal that I just made a second on, but someone else could have seconded it. But we have a roll call for that, or anyone else can step in and say, wait, let's back up, and in the future, if we have confusing moments, it is helpful for all four of us to, five of us, to help each other out with that. So I am happy to talk about that process too, wherever we want to when you guys are ready for that. Because maybe, because it was escalating, because that's what it felt like, because we weren't sure how anyone would react, that was the way we, I just say we, because we were here, did the next action was to change chairs, then to say who said what, who said this wrong. You know, like, well, that we want to be making progress and forward, not talking about. I don't know if that would be helpful to the item, but it's the item. A lot of these that if we've been to more than 2 meetings, we've heard it 4 to 6 times already. So we've already heard a lot of the comments in new and creative ways. And so they might get lost a little bit when we're in the live meeting, listening, and just feeling escalated.
I think sorry, you want to go?
We have a comment
Yeah,
online.
I think we're still talking on the board. I think that would have been a good opportunity to follow Guy's suggestion. We don't take breaks. We've started taking rest breaks, which I'm very thankful for long meetings. But I think it is appropriate to take a small, what's it, not German, recess? I'm not sure what the term, I can't remember the term.
It is a recess.
Reset, thank you. It probably is appropriate to take a small assessment really heated. So I think that's a very good suggestion for the future. And perhaps after there'd been, since there was a motion, we had to act on the motion to vacate the chair. Once we vacated the chair, perhaps a break then would have been good. Again, I don't think we're going to necessarily ever do that again, but you know, there is a process for it. It result in then electing a new chair for the rest of the meeting. That should have probably been a 2-step process, but I think that again would have been a good time to take a break.
I don't, you know, I don't think we need to go take a nap, but I mean, you know, we're in this meeting for 4 hours without a break. It's great. You know, if you go to the assembly, they take breaks on a regular, you know, it just makes, you know, oh, it's going to push us back. No, it's not. It'll probably help us be done quicker, to tell you the truth. So.
Yeah, I think a lot of what happens is just reactive. Even when there's a discussion, a lot of the time we're reacting to something's just been said, or we're discussing, doing counterpoints, or just asking for clarification. And again, just a break breaks that cycle. So that you're probably right. It probably can affect them shorter. I mean, that's a topic for our other meeting later about how we do meetings. But I think clearly we have meetings that are too long, and we probably cover too much material, repetitive. That's outside the scope today.
Well, not necessarily. I think one of the issues in this was a process. I mean, I actually had trouble ever figuring out what I felt about this thing because about the quote unquote workforce housing, which is not specifically for workforce and not exactly housing, but whatever. The thing about that is that it didn't. The process was very odd to me. Cannot imagine a situation in which a GBOS member comes up with a trails proposal and doesn't run it through trails, or, you know, a cemetery thing and doesn't like do Tommy the courtesy of speaking to him in the trail and the cemetery thing. Now I know that I suspect that there are some kind of personal dynamics with what's going on with GHEC, but then that's something we need to confront. We should not be bypassing a committee that we specifically chose for their holidays. And, you know, we got some people on there like Larry Daniels, who I think probably knows more about the economics, topography, and realities of developing in this valley than the rest of us put together. And we bypassed all of that. And that's why we ended up having some of the discussions we did. Like, that should have been workshopped with our local experts. And I felt kind of frustrated because I felt like the community doesn't understand. I know you feel like we've heard all kinds of things about this. The fact is, it's changed a lot along the way, and some things I hadn't heard until right near the end, like the 12. Maybe I missed it, but it wasn't until the last land use meeting that I'd heard the business about 12 units per parcel or 20 dwelling units per acre. And you're mischaracterizing the question I asked. I wasn't asking worst case scenario, and I wasn't using the absolute terms you had. So you oversimplified the question, and maybe that's why you reacted in the way you did. But I was curious about, Mike, excuse me, but I was curious about kind of what is the overall acreage at play. And we've got, it turns out, 20 some odd acres of GC6. Now, you're right, it's not all stuff that could end up with, but I was just trying to get a rough handle on the numbers. So anyway, I don't want to go back and rehash that, but what I do want to talk about is the process. I do have trouble with the way we ignored GHEC. I'm sorry, the way GHEC was ignored. So
GHEC was not ignored. GHEC just had a schedule at the time, which they've since changed, where they did not meet until after GBUS or after land use met. And there isn't a requirement that ideas that we're going to be bouncing around for at least 2 months, or at least 2 rounds of meetings, have to originate in a particular place. And I think if that committee was better managed and was actually a more open committee, it might help a lot as well. But I mean, there've been plenty of things that have come up to that committee which they've refused to discuss. So again, I think that's a topic we can do better on when we're focusing on our rules and procedures, how we relate to other committees, because this whole thing has to be resolved. There's some interesting nuances about how GBUS works within the municipality and within the concept of local government in other parts of the municipality. So the whole community council issue. So I want to put that to one side. Personally, I don't think that's the right topic for this. I think we should talk about how we can deal with the dynamics between members of the board, between the board and the communities better. So I like that focus. So just to be really clear on the earlier thing, I agree with you that it was not an appropriate thing to say. Your question was invalid. I want that to be really clear. Again, following your criticism earlier, you haven't come and asked me that directly. You haven't communicated with me about that since. So the first time I actually heard you say that was in this meeting today in public. So I think if you criticize people at the board for not taking the approach you yourself refused to take, chose not to take.
I think that.
But we could perhaps we could perhaps all follow the same better principles you suggested earlier.
I think what I realized Monday is that things had gotten personal and heated in a way that I did not understand. So the last thing I was going to do was engage, because I was really insulted by what you did. And it was, in fact, insulting. Both of you.
So there's
I was insulted, excuse me.
Okay.
I raised a point about it. That point was ignored by the board. And I was promptly deposed, if you will. Now, I don't mind that. I don't ever need to chair again. I mind very much the way it was managed. It was public and it was unfortunate. And it did not make GBOS look good. So I'm going to need some kind of apology about that. And I think GBOS and, excuse me, I think Girdwood deserves an apology about that. Girdwood should not have seen that. That was an embarrassing display.
I think there was embarrassment at multiple levels. I think the behaviour of the chair preceding that was embarrassing, and Girdwood should get an apology for that behaviour. We all have a right, any member of the board has a right to raise a motion to vacate the chair. We had a vote, and it was, I believe, a 4-1 vote.
We did not have a vote.
We did.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
Did we have a vote? Okay, all right. But we did.
So there was a valid motion, there was a second, there was a vote to vacate the chair, which I believe was 4-1. Remember correctly?
And no objections.
Okay. So there were no objections. It wasn't a voice vote. It should have been a voice vote. So that process shouldn't be embarrassing. I mean, that's just something that the board can do at any point.
It's not actually.
There has to be.
Have you looked into it? That's not actually the correct process. No, it's not the correct.
I've looked into it, yes.
I have looked into it as well, and I am saying it is not the correct.
So how would you think it should have been done?
So the first thing is, my point of order should not have been summarily dismissed.
Which point of order was that? Sorry, I don't remember.
I raised an objection about being told that what I was saying was invalid. And that was summarily dismissed, never discussed. And at that point, when I said point of order, you jumped in with point of order, chair is doing this. And speaking of yelling, you might want to listen to that because that was yelling.
I don't remember you saying point of order, but it will all happen really quickly.
I did.
I thought both of you were saying point of order, or one of you did. I didn't think it was.
Very clearly first.
I'm not sure why the chair would be calling a point of order. That seems a lot.
It is unusual. It is unusual, but I was trying to, you can say it doesn't always have to happen, but it can say, so I said, and was speaking to the decorum issue when you shouted over me and I got summarily kicked off the chair. So that's problem number one. Problem number two, if we do have this kind of thing kicking up, what is supposed to happen is that a member of the board can say, I think there's an issue here, and you say it to the chair and you give the chair a chance to address what your objection is. So you could have said, I feel like you're belaboring the point or whatever. Again, I don't feel like I would have to belabor these points if this had been properly publicly workshopped, but whatever. That would have been the respectful way to handle it. And that's the way that's laid out in Robert's rules, right? And then the chair says, well, I disagree. I think I had this, or the chair says, okay, right? And then if the chair disagrees, then you guys have a vote on, no, this is correct. This should be happening. The chair's wrong, right? At which point the chair then has the ability to say, okay, fine, I'll shut up about it, right? Or I'm going to stick to this point, and at that point you change chairs. So the way it was managed didn't give me any way to even understand what the objection was really. And, again, I'm sorry if I was talking too much, but yeah, I will just say that is quite an accusation given some of the meetings we've had. If there is an overall generally dominating voice.
That wasn't the objection.
I don't think it's mine.
That was not the objection. That's a mischaracterization of what happened. The objection was, you said earlier that there's almost this personal attack thing. There absolutely have been multiple personal attacks from you, which have gone on far longer than just back to January. And, there's a level at which you just expect that as on the board. You expect a certain level of kind of disrespect and sort of aggression from other people, typically from other people in the community rather than other people, not Girdwood specifically, just anyone, just the public in general. And you have to kind of tolerate that. It's felt very, very personal from you specifically, Jennifer. And it's kind of disappointing because I wasn't expecting that. And still find it a little disappointing, and I wish it would stop. I don't feel any personal hatred or dislike of you as an individual at all. Still consider you used to be a friend. It's difficult to feel friendship all the time, every day now, but I still think I'd still put you in that category. So I don't know what started that. Maybe it was you brought up the ADU issue from about 3 years ago, and I know that been brought up multiple times recently by you and at least the chair of GHEC. So maybe it started from then. But I've not enjoyed that feeling, and I don't think it's necessary. I definitely don't think it's in the interests of us as a board to continue that. But I think we can handle. I know we both can. All of us can handle things in a consistently professional way. And I hope that this meeting is a way to sort of just air the laundry and reset it back to that position where we can all be professional.
Okay, so you mentioned personal attacks, and I really thought that I had not. I know that I challenge different understandings, and I know that I come from a different viewpoint. But I thought that I've been very careful not to say, personal things like, you don't know what you're talking about. You should have studied this. You should have done that. I don't use statements in that way, I don't think. But all the meetings are on record. And so what would help me a lot is if you could, let me know specific meetings. In this case, I will review the January one. I don't remember it, but this sounds like it goes back farther. And so if you could please let me know the ways in which it was actually personal and not something that you chose to take personally, I would appreciate that, because I know that I can point to use statements from you and not just towards one person and not just towards, in fact, there's yeah, it's kind of a little cadre of us who are like, oh yeah. So it's, but I don't want to get into that. We can like put it just on paper and say, this is the actual words of what was said. Then that would help me a lot, because I've never meant it personally. I know that I challenge on stuff, but I've wanted it always to be about the subject matter. And to that end, invited you and Kaylee over several times to my house, and we've talked after meetings, including most recently, I think, at the STR thing, which is after, that the assembly work session had, and that's after, I think, some of the things you're talking about. And we had a long conversation afterwards. So I was completely unaware of any lingering things, because in the course of an hour-long conversation, it might have thought that might have been a good time to bring that up. But anyway, I don't need to keep belaboring this, and we do have other people need to speak. Do you have, you're quiet.
Well, I don't know about. I don't, well, we're not gonna go to court, so I don't think he needs to go back and find out these. I think he's relayed to you how he feels, right? And I think you could just go, okay, and maybe keep that in the back of your mind going forward. I don't think we need to go back, it's like in a marriage, well, give me that example, tell me that example. And it's like, but that's how they feel, that, and I see the tension between, and call it personal attack, call it whatever. So I don't think he needs to go back and find these, but I think it's important that what he said to you, he knows, I mean, we're not gonna do anything for that phrase that he's sending you, right? If we write it down, and I guess we could escalate this to whatever for no reason. But, I think the point is, you don't like to be talked to like that, right?
Thank you for that. It actually, yes, someone, I mean, of course, right, if it would. But there is, what I was trying to get at, and I understand your point of like, good grief, let's not rehash the old stuff. But what I was trying to get at is, I feel like some stuff has been taken personally that wasn't meant personally, but also wasn't said personally. That like, I would really encourage a look back at the words, just to see like, maybe what it felt like is, if I don't like this policy, maybe it feels like a personal attack, but it really not only isn't it, but it never was. I feel like I should be able to attack policy without the sense that I'm attacking the person. Because they're completely different.
They are completely different, and that's why I say that it felt personal, it felt like just an attack on policy. But again, it's not just this one policy. Many times we've talked about it. It's gone on for longer than that. But I appreciate the couples therapy that Guy was doing there. I think again, bringing this up, having a discussion about it in the way we do, pointing out behaviors that are causing problems, whether they're intended to be problematic or not, behaviors that are causing problems, and identifying them, letting us know, and all of us thinking about it, and all of us being aware that yes, you can we can, as individuals, we can intervene with, conversations that are getting derailed elsewhere on the board as well. I think we all have a responsibility to do that when we see things going badly. We're all trying to make sure, not just the chair, everybody is trying to make sure the meetings are productive. So I think if we can empower everybody to sort of feel we can at least comment on the manner of conversation, not just the content, not just the, actual content of it. Procedure.
I guess, I'm sorry, Wayne.
No, that's it.
Jennifer, that call to order, or, when he said that, what action did you want from the board at that? Point? Just to say, you can't say that and acknowledge it. Okay. I agree, I mean, I wish I would have woke up and I didn't, but, yeah, I did agree with changing the chair at that point because it just seemed like that was a smart thing to do, just to keep the meeting moving. And
Like, so according to what I read about the process, it should be brought up as like, and it could be as simple as we're belaboring the point. It can also be a call to question, right? Or you can call a process, and a process is just like, a B2P kind of thing, but it creates a break, or you can ask for recess and say. So there's a number of different, without going like this more draconian route, there's a number of different. And so to that point, like I decided, I guess I know that I had talked at one point about parliamentary training. I thought that the 4-acre thing fit that. Clearly it's not enough. So I have already talked to the Alaska Municipal League, and they think they might be able to do one for $500. And I think that would be well worth it. So I'm working with them on kind of what to include in this, because similar to 4-acre, it's not something they normally do. So we're trying to, because they do whole weekend long classes. And I was like, yeah, that's not. So they think that they can, but also those weekend classes are designed for people that are new to the entire governmental experience. And so they said focus on kind of more. So all of those are ways to like diffuse rather than, I feel like that really exacerbated something that, yeah, anyway.
Can I just ask you a question about that particular incident? Do you think it was going to, from the point at which I made that motion, do you think there are other ways it could have diffused that? Just apart from perhaps taking a break, because it felt like it escalated to the previous kind of thing, and was at a point where it was just untenable. That's my feeling for where I was. Do you feel different? Fine.
I can listen back, but I recall I really did have one more question, and I had just said this whole piece about, thank you for your work on this. Blah, blah, blah. I thought I had just said that. I thought we were wrapping up.
I was ready to call the question, but there's so much talking, and I know you're in the moment, whoever it is speaking, so you're not reading the room really. I wasn't gonna, I guess you're allowed to interrupt to call a question, but I was waiting to finish. And then I didn't get to call the question because I thought to move the meeting and help everyone's time. I thought we could do that. And if no one's ready to call the question, we just vote against calling the question.
I mean, you need to be able to, everybody needs to be able to speak on things, to a limit, it's not, I'm not upset with you or it didn't bother. I didn't feel like it was just you being laboring. This is what I'm saying, we had just gone, and I should have called the question 10 minutes earlier, to tell you the truth. You put it in context, we were just voting on not the actual thing, but just going to the next step and let's see where it goes. Or, we've talked about it and either passes or it doesn't. And then we go on. And, so I think we need to be able to speak to things as long as we can, good point. But it wasn't just you at all. I probably kept interjecting little things in there at some point. All kind of talking about the same thing.
Well, I would have to say I would far rather have discussed that at GHEC. And if there are issues there, we should deal with it in a way that we can use GHEC. It is our subcommittee. So I would have much preferred to have an entire conversation on GHC. And a friend of mine who was at the last meeting commented that it seems like GBOS talks a lot more than in her days. And so I've talked to some of the people and old GBOS members from years past. And what I think the way our subcommittees are supposed to work, and I know GHEC is new, but the way this is supposed to work is it brings something to us and, we look at it for little tweaks, we ask some questions and we say, fine, right? But they all have commented that in the past, it's been, it's the public that speaks more. And somewhere along the line, that has changed. I think partly it's we really need to have the conversations as much as possible at the committee level, and that'll help with dynamics and emotions and everything. And then second of all, like if we're having it all at the committee level, then you understand. Like part of what I was frustrated with is I didn't understand. Like that proposal that we were working on. I generally don't understand some aspects of it. It's not trying to attack the proposal. And I also struggle with getting soup that's already cooked sometimes and now trying to adjust the garlic. If we're doing this stuff in the committees more, then we're not trying to do the body work on a moving car or not trying to adjust soup that's already cooked. Like when you bring something, when we have GBOS members bringing something to us in the way that this happened, like it's no wonder it feels personal because it kind of is, kind of your baby. It's not something that came from a number of people in the community asking for it. It got workshopped in the community and then it got here. At that point, when something's been workshopped by the community more and it's all this and this community member wanted, I'm just like, okay, fine, give me my understanding. Right? Ask a few questions in the tweet or something. But I don't need to rethink what people like trails at their heart and soul and mind, like all of this. I don't need to rethink that. Right? So that's why the process is the way it is, right? And if something is breaking that, then that's what we need to address. But it's coming, I think it's coming up the chain here and breaking bigger things now.
We'll have the opportunity to discuss that definitely when we talk about committee structures at our meeting in mid-May. Just to clarify something as well, it's been at 4, I believe. It's been December, January, February, March, actually, and April. That'd be 5 up to GHEC meetings. Although as of the last meeting, 4.
Could I add one thing about that? I think about the proposal you keep referring to, Jennifer, that it's clear to anyone listening that you're not really in favor of it, but you want to find more information. But for those 5 meetings, plus the land use 5 meetings or 4, and the other GHEC 4 or 5, the public is encouraged to send feedback. And if they're sending it to Mike and he's reading it, or me, or both of us, we can actually incorporate it and do work outside of meetings. But to only hear the feedback at the meeting is okay. It's respectful feedback. We listen actively and think, okay, that person didn't have time for 3 weeks to say anything on the computer, but they can say it here on record, and then we can put that in, and then weeks go by, or just a week because it's the next committee that adjustments can be made to it. So it slowly was edited, probably like very slowly, but any of your questions from the very last week, there's a lot of weeks to say what didn't like about it, even though we all could think of new ways, like things keep evolving, just like we want to talk about the trails plan, but someone said, we'll never get it done if we keep having good ideas. Talk about another bench over here, and we can do that later in 20 years or 10 years, but
well, I know that this
I
didn't
interrupted Mike in case.
Oh, sorry.
No, you probably have.
I felt like this didn't actually did not actually get workshopped and passed by GHEC, and I would have liked that to happen. It got into a weird thing where it went first to LUC, partly because Holton Hills and yada yada, and I know it was on the agenda in December and didn't get adequately discussed, but there was a fire legitimately. There might have been other things going on, but Holding Hills was kind of an unexpected fire at that point. And then, but to your point, Brianna, I can't actually email you along the way, right? Because this is a you and Mike proposal.
You're allowed to send your feedback. Or you could always, I think, sorry to interrupt you, but I'm pretty sure that's what we asked for at meetings.
No, yeah.
So Margaret and then CC, just one of us. I mean, CC Margaret.
That's actually a good question.
Feel like that's dicey, actually, because you're working on this together. And so obviously, if I give feedback to you, you either work it by yourself or you work with Mike. And so that, to me, it straddles an awkward place on Open Meetings Act. And I did go to all the meetings and I did make comments at LUC, and I was still trying to wrap my head, but speaking of the, like, this is actually a huge proposal. And so I ended up kind of, being part of trying to figure out, like, where does this work? Where does this not work? And feeling like if I don't understand it, maybe I'm not the only one. But anyway, again, we don't have to belabor it, but I disagree that I really think it should have come out of GHEC and then gone to LUC rather than the back and forth that happened. And again, we picked GHEC for the brain power we have in that committee right now is astounding. So I want to use it, but I also want to give it the same deference we give to all the other committees. We wouldn't have done what we did to cemetery or trails. I mean, I can't imagine doing it to trails. Talk about poking the bear. Never do that.
But it's obviously a different type of committee to the others. It's not an open committee in the way the others are. What I'd like to just say is I think we've had a good discussion. I wouldn't say I've enjoyed it, but I definitely think it's been helpful to me. I feel I've got probably much as I'd like to get out of this, unless there's anything specific. I'm just wondering what we take from this meeting, what we take from this discussion as actionable themes.
Well, I have some suggestions, but does somebody else want to?
Well, I was going to ask the question. I've got some thoughts. Ask the question. Okay.
Well, I want to thank all of you for making today priority before we even knew it'd be this most gorgeous day in months, and having a discussion we needed to have a while ago. So I don't have any profound takeaways, but I think we all need to, it's evident everyone here that's serving is taking their job pretty seriously. And we also want to do it for the good of the community, remember why we're here, and you've already said not taking things personally, but also just doing the best you can with what we have. And speaking how you feel though at the same time, because that's where we had some problems with the previous meetings. And being calm and respectful and trying not to escalate, even though that can be challenging when you've read so much and you've spent hours doing something. And you've probably been really patient at all the other meetings. So I think it's good to hear in this space how you felt or how you feel now, but in the moment it is pretty different. And I still know how I felt in January, and I don't want to have that happen again.
You had added this topic to the agenda, is that correct? What, yeah, I'd like to hear what you have to say. I mean, did you have rules put in on here? Or some, what were you looking for? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Tools. And I do think we have some like takeaway tools. I mean, honestly, just to get it all on the table. First of all, there is a better procedural way to handle it. So I hope we all hear that. Like if, first of all, if anyone's ever feeling like that, I think we should just call it recess, right? Like if you're feeling like things are like, and you can call it a process, it can all point a process, or you can ask for a recess, either one, right? But, you don't even have to explain it, right? You can just like, and that would probably be the simplest way to diffuse it. Then there is a process for if it's not going to be diffused. There's a process that if we're ever in this situation again, we really need to follow the process, and we can just take a little moment, Google it, and do it. So just out of like, it's just basic respect. I think the other thing is, let's see, we have the process in the moment. We have we're all able to diffuse in the moment if we're getting there. Okay. I think this is an extraordinary learning experience for me. I'm always open to hearing I'm doing something wrong. And typically after every meeting, I'm checking with people, is this what about this? What about this? So I don't mind hearing from the board as well, the same thing. Like I'm actively seeking it out, and I'm a little testy about it, but just because of the Open Meetings Act. But if it's just you saying to me or you saying to me, and that's a different thing because we don't vote on this stuff anyway. So I think that we're in, right? So we're in the clear on this. We can do this. It's okay. Like at the end of the day, we're all helping each other dig each other out of ditches later, right? So that's what at the end of the day, it all boils down to that. So we need to be able to handle that. And then lastly, I do feel like we've got a process, a fundamental process issue with the thing that was on the table, and the fact that it seemed to have not gone through a process in the same way that we would expect something that came from trails or came from PSAC or came from cemetery. And it's not true that it's fundamentally different. I don't think I'm going to use that statement instead of like, but PSAC has assigned members.
Yep,
So it's, yeah, anyway. That's what I would say about takeaways. How does that sound?
Oh, good. Meeting was somewhat of a success for all of us. I think we're going to talk about the roles and one thing with this proposal, and we almost don't need to talk about it now. That proposal was born between somebody on the board, right? And so we should be able to, that should be able to be introduced to everybody and ran through the thing. GHSC is take up the hard, I mean, nobody's figured out what we asked them to figure out in the United States yet. It's the hardest job in the world.
It
And it's
is.
not going to be figured out for 40 more years probably, or we'll see it come to fruition and actually, or 10 or whatever. But we can talk about that, I think, during when we meet next, right?
The rules and procedures part.
The rules and procedures.
Right.
Okay. And then, I just, I guess, you can just be like, feelings, pull your pants up, but it just gets in the way of, I think this is good because, it just creates animosity. Then it's just nothing goes anywhere, you know what I mean? And we just get nothing accomplished and we just are, it's just,
Just
so
can I
it's
jump
not
in?
worth it. So I do appreciate this meeting. I hate these kind of things, but it is good. And I don't know if we need any other action than, well, we said this, let's see if it works. We kind of know, what we can do. And we know that if we say something, somebody says something you don't agree with, you can text them, call them up. I mean, I think we need to have open dialogue on that too. Just, I thought I'm glad you called it, I don't think there were other things that need to be discussed too, and I'm glad we're able to discuss them.
Yeah, I think we probably should have called this meeting in February and dealt with the problems we had in the January meeting. And maybe that things wouldn't have escalated then. It felt like multiple escalations. definitely recess seems to be I think calling a short recess would probably be a secret sauce in many situations. I think we still have there's still this kind of underlying question of whether we would be better being more formal, or just, we have to be formal to some extent. And I think we sometimes end up in the space of not being formal enough. So we don't have clear processes for things, and things kind of act a bit too organically. We're not clearly deliberating versus managing meetings. And that falls into the bigger topic about how we do our own meetings and how we do our own procedure. I had a fourth point as well, and I forgot what that was. I think parliamentary training would be helpful. Yeah, and again, I think this has been a helpful discussion. I just wish we had this early.
I also wish we had this earlier and tried to have it earlier, but not successful. So at least we're having it. And I hope we can, us and our future GBOS in years to come, can work together as a team, because that's how best success can happen. And we don't always have to agree, and that's totally fine, because we need to represent the community and feel that we're doing that. Not just, we're not here for our personal interests. We're doing this for the community. So working together, collaborating, and disagree. But if we're following the rules, we do need the parliamentary procedure training, if that's how we want to go, because we want to follow the rules. But the more closely you want to follow them, the more training we all do need. And then I'm sure that this would be part of it, but other committees would be welcome to learn too, because a lot of people in our community are on volunteer boards. They'd all benefit.
The other thing I was going to say, just about the Meetings Act and fit within everything else. So there's this definition of elected official in the municipal code, and as far as I can tell, I think there are only the assembly member elected official, the mayor is elected official, the school board members are elected official. I think according to the way it's written, the only other elected officials in the municipality are us four and Amanda, GBOS, because it talks about general service area boards, and we are a general service area board. We're not a road service area. I think we're the only one that's elected. There are others which are appointed. So, we're in this kind of difficult, weird situation, unlike all the other of our committees and all of the other various bodies around Bankridge and South Central in general. We kind of sit very heavily within the sort of heavy process municipal thing, but also a community. We're also much, much closer to the community. And that's, I think, why we end up in the situation of having kind of bouncing between informal and formal. But the other thing is, when it comes to Open Meetings Act, there's definitely an exception for administration. So some of the things about how meetings are run fall within that exception. So completely fine things at all. And definitely we still, we all have relationships outside of it, because it's so small. We all have relationships outside of the board. So I think that's the communication is what's acceptable.
Do we want to? Patty had a her hand up too.
What is an hour and a half? And
Okay, well, so how are you guys feeling to be said what you want to say?
I think it should everybody's time. Big topic, great to talk about it.
Can I just ask if, as an impartial observer, I hate to put you on the spot here, Claire, but is there anything you think we should, any actions you think we should take in the short term?
No, it's a cult of personality. People just get passionate about what they get involved in, and at times there's certain topics that I think lead to some things that you guys have just discussed. And so I'm glad to see you working through it. I've sat through many committee other meetings, you never would have this discussion. It just continues to grind on. And so I appreciate you guys taking the time to do this and figure it out. But no, I mean, we don't want to become politarians. I can say that. That's one thing that's not in our wheelhouse. And so what we can do is we're trying to get resources, and I did purchase a quick guide for Robert rules and different things, and I can have those here for you, but I just want to be clear that we're not parliamentarians. So, but we do try to help organize, especially we sit through a lot of these meetings and we have some sort of understanding of it, but I'm not going to say we're expert in any way.
Hopefully we don't get to that point. I don't think we need to be.
No, we've gone through it already with another committee and it was very hard to make things work. So, but we got through it.
Well, to that point, 4-acre, one of the reasons they don't emphasize parliamentary training is they talk about the way in which it can be used kind of as a bludgeon and to shut down debate and conversation. And so, that's a tricky, it is something we want to be careful of. It would have been nice if more of the board could have attended that training because I thought it was spectacular, but I'm trying to write out kind of everything they said in the salient points. I'm going to go ahead and, say, like, I appreciate, as I listed out, that I think we have some takeaways. I want to say that I am still really disappointed in the way you guys handled, in particular, Brianna and Mike, the way you handled Monday night. And that isn't something that sits right yet for me just because we talked about it. I thought it was poorly done. Now, I understand that there might have been lingering things and other things, but I feel like I'm being, speaking of marital counseling, held responsible for an escalation that I was not aware was happening. So I'm sorry, like, I just truly had no idea. So while I can go back and look at some of that, I don't think it excuses your behavior on Monday night.
So I'm surprised by that last comment about you weren't aware of it, because I know many other community members were aware of the problems that happened. See, there just isn't a broad enough communication here. Because multiple people have mentioned that to me, problems that were back in January and even earlier. In fact, I think I heard from other community members who you'd spoken to about problems from like last month. So it's clearly been lingering for a while. Again, I think this is a useful discussion. But I think I agree with the characterization that that you've been a completely disconnected party to this. You've been very much part of it, part of the escalation process. The escalation may not be the best term, but part of definitely there's been a tension, and I don't think either of us have been very successful, and probably others have been successful in sort of redirecting that tension.
And once again, I feel that my comments were mischaracterized. I didn't claim disconnected. I claimed a lack of awareness of understanding. And so we really didn't need to open it up for another line of attack.
Yeah, it's not line of attack.
And that is what that comment felt like, but we'll just leave it at that.
It was.
I will say that I would like an apology at the next meeting. I don't actually expect one. I don't expect one, but I would like one, and I think one is warranted. And so do other members of the committee. So if you feel, I'm just going to put it out there so that it is abundantly clear stated.
Well, because you wanted to state that for the record, will you be apologizing for January's meeting?
I'm not aware yet. I have to go back and listen. Like, I need to know what it is, or I'm happy to take this offline and you can talk to me about what it is.
I have talked to you about it offline.
Okay, I somehow or another, honest to gosh, sorry, I had a lot of family stuff going on. It didn't connect. So
we're all human. It's okay.
it
But
genuinely, I'm sorry,
I'm asking you.
genuinely didn't connect. So can you, if, I don't know that you and I have to talk about it here, but if we please let me know and I will listen with an open mind. And I understand your frustration if you feel like you've already told me. And believe me, it's genuinely innocent that it didn't connect and it
Didn't
so,
connect. Okay.
so it just, it can happen when there's a lot of other things going on. So it didn't connect, I'm sorry.
But it's real, just like,
Right.
just like
Right.
how you thought, so.
Yeah, I'm not invalidating it. I just didn't. Yes, okay. All right, can we,
Can I just point out great choice of use of the word invalid? I'm just reflecting, yes, it's right. It's not a great term when I used it. It was the appropriate term now.
okay, Brett, did you have anything to say? I think we all talked out here and, are ready to adjourn. This. Did you have anything to say, Brett?
I felt that I had to at least address the body, given some of the comments, and it's been an enlightening conversation, and I'd like to see something positive out of this in the end. But I think that the attacks that I am kind of hearing is people get upset when it gets amplified or elevated, but there's another kind of attack. And it happened twice in this meeting. So, for instance, it's a disinformation attack. And through the chair, unless this is a public comment period, but through the chair, Mr. Edgington offered us two specific examples of providing this type of unsubstantiated attack, such as no public involvement in GHEC meetings, and these are not open to the public. And what was ironic is I sat with my hand up and unable to correct a matter of fact, because this meeting in this body does not perform with the same type of public involvement that the subcommittees do. And I would challenge Mr. Edgington to actually provide specific examples where public were not allowed to speak at any time during any of those meetings, which have been recorded. I might remind everyone. So there is always ample time for anybody to have input, ideas, discussion, open, good, bad, or indifferent on topics that are in front of us. And that even goes so far as having people stand up and attack individual citizen volunteers of this committee in, I guess, active engagement towards an agenda, I would say. So that's the first bit of the type of interaction I've been witnessing as a citizen in Girdwood, is the type of disparaging and underhanded disinformation type comments, because Mr. Edgington did go on to say and try to allude that the chair of the GHEC, Brett Wilbanks, was somehow responsible for the deficiencies, or bringing up the fact of the ADU code deficiencies, and was directly trying to tie a derogatory comment while involving the title GHEC chair. And it's that type of interaction, and it may not be elevated in voice, and it may not be the thing that resonates in someone's memory as being at a big event in January, which was a temper tantrum. What this is a constant erosion of public involvement and public trust. And the way the schedule worked out with the proposal that was all being debated, it was quite apparent in the end that it didn't have a permanent full-time bit to it, and it was really brought to that body after the fact. And the timing being what it is, it was quite convenient over the holidays to push through something without vetting and community review. And I'd bring us all the way up to just this last week, when LUC had to actually consider that GBOS went ahead with this temporary proposal without the requirements that the LUC and the community council had put on it. And so when that is in debate, and all of this is going on with the struggle for voice on GBOS and what is best for the community, what was lost in the whole shuffle was that the community's voice was disregarded and it was changed. And there's a procedure to handle this. And what I didn't hear in this special meeting was how GBOS is going to address the fact that they deviated from what the community had gone through and participated in and put in as requirements for this proposal. Because quite frankly, going back in the record, we can see things in this proposal have changed over time, as described by Member Sullivan, and not all of those were debated or vetted. But in the very 11th hour, it comes down to the one item that was required by the community council, and there was no open debate to it. So the bigger point to all of this is that the idea that GBOS speaks finally for the community without community council type of vetting or even trails committee involvement for the service area, something that GBOS can act on as a. I just am finding struck that the one thing left out of this whole discussion was what the community wanted, not what the proposers were after. And I think those were fair and honest questions by Member Wingard when she was trying to ask the question. And then all of a sudden, all of the policy and procedure was thrown out the door to do a vacate. But what never happened was those questions were never answered. So all of this noise and drama around it is a great example of what's been going on for quite a while in our community. And I think that everybody, the community, would be way better served if everybody worked towards the same goals, marching towards the same tune, and not trying to struggle for a unique agenda to solve a problem that hadn't been vetted, that came with conditions that were summarily dropped in a situation where the community is asking questions in the last land use committee, waiting on a letter of justification for why and what was the debate that GBOS had to disregard the conditions that the community placed on this temporary proposal. So it has been an interesting meeting, and I hope that we can do better by everyone, and ourselves included. And I think it's time for some honesty and to get away from the practice of pushing dishonest and divisive types of comments, which are totally interpreted as ad hominem attacks. That's not going to do anybody any good, and it will continue to cause festering wounds, which will benefit no one. So I look forward to not trying to write down a policy that says decorum, because quite frankly, when we get into discussions, sometimes we want to talk about it. Sometimes people are passionate about what they feel, what they believe in their opinion. But what should be recognized is that decorum should extend to downstream as well, that decorum should be the bar by which all members have to rise. So this was a great example of ways that we can improve. Thanks for the time. I appreciate all of your efforts. We're all volunteers in this, and that should go with a pat on the back for just spending the time. Thanks.
Thank you, Brett. All right. Anything else from the good of the order?
Well, just very briefly, I think a lot of the questions Brett asked are ones we.
No, again, when I make a public comment statement, it's not a
I don't know
rebuttal.
who's chairing
It's
at the moment.
my
I don't
comment
think
and my
Mr.
statement.
Wilbanks does not have the floor. So if Mr. Wilbanks could show some understanding of the rules. And that was deliberate, because clearly that was an interruption, inappropriate. A lot of the questions he posed are ones which we've already said we're going to discuss, or we have said we are going to discuss at the discussion of rules and procedures. So it's not that we haven't addressed them, it's that we have a forum where we're going to focus on those very questions. Our rules and procedures generally and how committees work. So I just wanted to clarify that so we're not missing it. It's just a later meeting.
Okay, one thing. Much as I hate to bring it up, you're right, there was an interruption, but then your statement was if Mr. Wilbanks could please show some understanding of the rules.
Yes, because consistently there's misrepresentation. There was misrepresentation multiple times in what I said previously.
I think there are better ways to state.
There are better ways to say
In
that, but I
fact-
stand behind what I said.
Well, it was rude. And it was inappropriate, and it should not be coming from a member of the board. So you can object to him interrupting fairly. But we should not demean a member of the public's
understanding, of the rules, which is what you just did. And this is what I mean about what is consistently happening. And by the way, in the last meeting, you did it with somebody who's not named Brett. And not only did you do that, but you also addressed a member of the public directly and you just did it again. So we can catch it in the moment, but
Yeah.
please don't do
We
it.
don't have a chair at the moment. We fear not to have a chair at the moment, so nobody was taking that role. So I think in the circumstances, again, it's reasonable to not have interruptions from, especially when the member of the public has already had plenty of time to say what they have to say.
And I agreed with the point about the interruption,
Yeah.
and I am raising an official objection. And I want it understood, I'm not gonna listen to it anymore, that when you demean members of the public or their understanding of rules, I will catch you in the moment now, so we can cover it in the moment.
Okay, and I hope we all do that. I hope we all hold each other to a higher standard than we have. We've allowed people to slip doing that, not just me. We've allowed other people to slip from that significantly. I hope we all do the same thing in a productive way.
Amen, are we done?
I move to adjourn.
Okay.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Kyle.
There another meeting?
Month.